The Ford government isn't backing down from its plans to build homes on Greenbelt land, despite a scathing report that calls into question how and why certain areas were selected.
Ontario's Auditor General Bonnie Lysyk says in a report yesterday that the housing minister's chief of staff handpicked 14 of the 15 Greenbelt sites. Developers with access to that chief of staff now stand to make billions of dollars off the land that ultimately the AG also found was unnecessary to meet the province's housing goals. Auditor General also pointing out decisions were rushed through and the proper consultations were abandoned.
Rather than allow the housing ministry's non-political public service staff to conduct a comprehensive process with expert review to identify and select lands for possible removal from the Greenbelt, the government assigned responsibility for this important assignment to political staff. The housing minister's chief of staff, who led and controlled a truncated, highly restricted selection exercise for the removal of lands from the Greenbelt. The process was biased in favor of certain developers and landowners who had timely access to the housing minister's chief of staff. Owners of the 15 land sites removed from the Greenbelt could ultimately see more than a collective $8.3 billion increase to the value of their properties.
Premier Doug Ford responded to the report and addressed questions about the affordability of homes to build on the Greenbelt, including whether immigrants would be able to afford these new multi-million-dollar homes.
To say that, they wouldn't be able to afford a home is actually disturbing. This is what this province was built on. This province was built on people coming from all over the world, believing in the Ontario dream, that they can start a business. And I've talked to many new Canadians that have come here, and after year one or year two, they have their own business, or they get a fabulous job at a company that's paying really well. And then their family members get a good job. And then they all save money, and they put down a deposit.
And the Premier's Housing Minister, Steve Clark, also speaking to CP24 Live at 5 yesterday about the report, defending his handling of the Greenbelt file.
We maintain that I didn't disclose anything to anyone prior to Cabinet making that decision. But at the same time, I recognize that we did move too fast. I recognize that the recommendations within the report, look at the transparency piece. And I'm the first one to say I am committed to making sure that it gets fixed. I am committed to make sure that there is transparency and integrity put back in this system. And I'm going to follow the 14 recommendations and move them forward as fast as I can.
And opposition leaders are calling for Housing Minister Steve Clark to resign.
How is it that for month after month after month, after we were asking questions, after you were asking questions, they didn't know the answers? Come on. We know somebody knew something, and if they didn't, if they had to have, what is it they call it, a plausible deniability, why? Why? Because they knew something didn't smell right. Because they knew that envelopes were exchanging hands at dinners.
Now, Mississauga Mayor and Liberal leadership candidate Bonnie Crombie says the report is another example of how the Ford government is abusing its power. Her statement goes on to say Doug Ford and the Conservatives prefer to pave over the voices of residents and municipalities at the expense of our environment and rich agricultural land. I call for a full investigation by appropriate and independent authorities to be launched immediately.